So when we think about complex adaptive systems, there's many examples that exist around us. And here you'll see 4 examples that exist at different time scales. So we have a city that's a prime example of a complex adaptive system. And usually a city, the time scale may be from 100 to several hundred years typically. We have ecosystems which may be hundreds of thousands of years old. And then when we look at economies, we have the time scale of this example of the complex adaptive system, which may be from 10 years to a few decades, generally speaking. And then a civilization is another example of a complex adaptive system where it may last for several thousand years at best. But one thing about each of these complex adaptive systems is they have something in common, and that's what I want to draw out in the next few slides. You know, what is it that's common about a sustainable complex adaptive system, and you know, what can we really learn from that in our own functioning? So to summarize the key, this is just a summary model, but really what drives sustainability of complex adaptive systems is 2 scales. So one is what I'd call a sublinear scale, and the other is a superlinear scale. So when we think, and I'm going to refer to this graph here on the right-hand side, but let's think about a city. Now, if we have a city and as it grows in size, then to service a larger population, you may have just a less and less number of, say, gas stations that are required to service a larger city. So there's some kind of economies of scale that's happening, and that gives an advantage. So as a system gets larger, then typically a key aspect to its sustainability is this economies of scale. But also what's happening in a city is that there's a lot of innovation that can occur, because as the population increases and as the diversity of a city increases, then there's more organic interactions that take place, and that drives innovation in general. And that aspect of scaling we refer to as superlinear scaling. And if you look at this graph here on the right-hand side, what really drives the sustainability is the differentiation as
an important message for Timothy Trevino.
As the organization grows in size, as an organization grows in size, this differentiation between the sublinear and superlinear is what creates sustainability of a complex adaptive system. So that's kind of like the underlying model of what drives sustainability in general. And if we go to the next slide, then this is how we recognize that we're in a complex adaptive system. So this is broken up into 2 areas. One is structurally, and second is the kind of dynamics that we would see. So structurally.
Sorry, really quickly, Pravir. So what you're saying is, so as far as complex adaptive systems go, right, they're looking for their business to become one, right? They're looking for their business to become sustainable and to have the structural and dynamic characteristics, right?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yes. And so, you know, the way that we know we're moving towards a complex adaptive system, so structurally is, you know, ideally we have, so the first point is just there's a single organization with truly decentralized control, meaning there's many different centers of power or of innovation within that organization. There's typically a high degree of interaction, both within the organization and outside. But one of the most important things is that it's all bound together by a cohesive culture. And that kind of provides a continuity no matter what's happening. And also there's something that we would begin to observe is that there's co-evolution between these parts that are disconnected or that operate independently, is that they would tend to, in a sustainable complex adaptive system, they would tend to grow in sync with each other. So that's structurally how we would begin to recognize that we're on that path. And then I'm just going to go over some of the dynamics real quick. And you may have heard of this phrase of being out of equilibrium. but it's essentially when there's a lot of different crises or challenges, and I would say much like our environment today, that come to the surface, and it seems like things are going to go out of control in some respect. But a complex adaptive system actually thrives on these out of equilibrium states because it's an opportunity to reconfigure how things work in the complex adaptive system. So anything that's truly operating as a complex adaptive system would thrive in this out of equilibrium state. And some of the things that would happen are, for example, like there would be increasing creativity that would be unpredictable. And that's that second point here. Or the organization or the city or an organization would look different, but the core of it would remain the same. And that's, so we would expect those kind of dynamics to come into play a lot more.